Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates, dealing with the sub-Cs for the Department of Public Works and Government Services, Shared Services Canada. We have with us today Minister, the Honourable Judy Foote, Minister of Public Services and Procurement. And Minister Foote, would you care to introduce your officials that you have with you, and then we'd ask you to commence with your opening statement. Hopefully no longer than 10 minutes. And I remind again all witnesses, ministers, and committee officials or committee members, we are in a televised environment. Minister, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to introduce themselves. Julie?
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Julie Charon. I am the Acting Chief Financial Officer at Public Services and Procurement.
Good afternoon. George DuPont. I'm the Deputy Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
And I'm Ron Parker, the President of Shared Services Canada.
Bonjour, I'm Manon Fillon. I'm the DG of Finance at SSC Canada. Sorry, I was mixing French and English. I should have said it in French, but that's okay.
The floor is yours, Minister.
Well, thank you. Bonjour à vous tous. I am honored to be here and to have been named Minister of Public Services and Procurement, and I look forward to establishing a constructive relationship with all of you on this committee. Je vous remercie pour votre.
I'd like to thank you for your invitation for me to appear here before your committee.
Has emphasized the importance of these committees, and I am committed to treating this committee with respect, given the important work which you will be doing. I look forward to working with all of you. Your work will be important in helping me advance the priorities set out in the mandate letter I received from the Prime Minister. I welcome our exchanges on these issues as we move forward. Departmental officials and I are here today to answer your questions about the Supplementary Estimate C, as well as the departmental performance reports for Public Services and Procurement Canada and for Shared Services Canada. Public Services and Procurement Canada acts as the government's principal treasurer, accountant, and real property manager. As the government's central purchasing agent, it buys everything from pencils to military equipment. It also supports our efforts to communicate with and provide services for Canadians in the official language of their choice. Shared Services Canada was established to deliver one email system, consolidated data centres, reliable and secure telecommunications networks, and non-stop protection against cyber threats. The department does this across 43 departments, 50 networks, 485 data centres, and 23,000 servers, all to make information more secure and easier for Canadians to access. At the heart of both of these organizations is a commitment to service and an ongoing effort to operate more efficiently and cost-effectively. A great deal of the work takes place behind the scenes, but that makes it no less vital. For instance, Public Services and Procurement Canada was directly involved in meeting our government's commitment to welcome 25,000 Syrian refugees. The department secured essentials like winter jackets, travel, housing, and food, while Shared Services provided necessary IT services and operational support. Many of our key priorities were laid out in our mandate letter, including prioritizing the national shipbuilding strategy. Our government is renewing the Canadian Coast Guard fleet and outfitting the Royal Canadian Navy so it can operate as a true blue water maritime force. Seaspan's Vancouver shipyards and Irving Shipbuilding in Halifax have invested millions of dollars to rebuild their facilities to allow them to build Canada's vessels efficiently. And work is well underway on the lead projects, the Offshore Fisheries Science Vessel in Vancouver and the Arctic Offshore Patrol vessels in Halifax. The shipbuilding strategy is good for Canada. It is creating jobs, building industrial capacity, and renewing the fleets. Canada has not built ships for a generation. That is why we recently hired a shipbuilding expert to provide us with advice on all facets of shipbuilding. We are also looking at ways to ensure more accurate planning and costing. The government is developing new costing methodologies to enable more precise budgeting forecasts. Going forward, we will be regularly refreshing our budgets and timelines so we are not working with outdated costing. We are determined to ensure all our activities are conducted as openly and transparently as possible. Canadians and stakeholders should be well informed of our shipbuilding plans, costs, progress, and challenges. Therefore, Canadians, journalists, and parliamentarians will receive regular updates on where we stand with our various shipbuilding projects. We are committed to making progress in other areas as well. The Building Canada Innovation Program bridges the pre-commercialization gap for the many Canadian businesses that have new and innovative products and technologies to sell. We will improve administration of the program so matches between innovative companies and government testing departments are made much more quickly. Departmental officials and I are partnering with suppliers and key stakeholders to make it easier for Canadian companies to do business with the government. We are determined to simplify and better manage government procurement and to focus on practices such as green and social procurement that support our government's economic policy goals. Improvements are also at the core of the work at Shared Services Canada, where modernizing the government's IT infrastructure is key to the digital delivery of information and services that Canadians expect. 60 legacy data centers have been consolidated into 3 enterprise-class data centers. This cut costs, increased data security, and improved service to partner and client organizations. SSC plays a vital role in protecting our national cyber infrastructure and Canadians' data on all federal networks. Security has been upgraded through a new 24/7 Security Operations Center that monitors and responds quickly to cybersecurity incidents, reducing both the number of critical IT incidents and the time it takes to resolve them. Both Public Services and Procurement Canada and Shared Services Canada are refining procurement. They are speeding up the process of informing industry of solicitations being tendered. This allows bidders more time to respond with innovative solutions that meet the government's needs. Another example of innovation, modernization, and the future direction of government operations is the transformation of the Government of Canada's inefficient 40-year-old pay system. The new pay system, called Phoenix, was implemented just 2 weeks ago on February the 24th, and the first pay cycle has proven to be a success. So far, it covers 34 departments involving 120,000 employees. The remaining 67 departments are scheduled to come online soon. The department is also pushing forward in real property management, design, and green construction. Public Services and Procurement Canada has been recognized for high-quality work in infrastructure project planning, for design, construction, and heritage expertise, and for other services to clients. The Days Met Bridge that connects Ontario and Quebec near Pembroke, Ontario, won a Canadian Institute of Steel Construction 2015 Design Award for Excellence in Steel Construction. The Tunney's Pasture Master Plan received a national award for comprehensive planning best practices, as well as a National Award of Merit for Urban Design. And the James Michael Flaherty Bridge at 90 Elgin Street received a City of Ottawa Award of Merit in the Ottawa Urban Design Awards. Public Services and Procurement Canada is also a world leader in sourcing property management services from the private sector. This approach has saved Canadian taxpayers about $700 million over the past 2 decades. And it was one of the first organizations in Canada to commit to meeting the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, or LEED as it's known, gold standard in new construction. Major renovations must meet the silver standard. 9 of the 10 new buildings constructed for the government across Canada in recent years are certified LEED Gold. The 10th, 30 Victoria, just across the river in Gatineau, is LEED Platinum, the highest level possible. This underscores our commitment to green, energy-efficient buildings. Construction work led by the department is happening around the country and generating important work for Canadians. Over the next 2 years, we anticipate major repair projects will be completed on several key assets. These include the Esquimalt Graving Dock in British Columbia and the Alexandra Bridge, which connects Ottawa and Gatineau just a few blocks from here. In addition, a new Government of Canada Pay Centre is currently under construction in Miramichi, New Brunswick, under a lease contract arrangement. Of course, parts of Parliament Hill and the surrounding blocks are also undergoing significant renovations. The rehabilitation of the Sir John A. Macdonald Building has been completed. The revitalization of the Wellington Building is nearly finished, and work continues on the significant West Block rehabilitation project, as well as others. Committee members will be happy to know that each one is on time and on budget. As part of my mandate, I have also been asked to undertake a review of Canada Post to ensure Canadians receive high-quality postal service at a reasonable price. The independent review will consider all viable options and provide Canadians with an opportunity to have a say in the decisions about Canada Post's future. I am hoping that this committee will play an important role in the Canadian consultation process as we reach out to Canadians to get their feedback once a task force that we will be putting in place will have done its work. This is an important task, and we are taking steps to make sure that we get the process right. Turning now to the 2015 Supplementary Estimate C, Public Services and Procurement Canada is seeking net funding of just over $83 million, increasing its approved funding to $3.22 billion. This requested funding is needed mainly for the management of federal real property, the reconstruction of the Grand Allée Armory in Quebec City, and the continuing rehabilitation of the parliamentary precinct, as well as for fees that allow Canadians to do business with the government using credit and debit cards. The 2015-2016 Supplementary Estimate C for Shared Services Canada represents an increase of just over $54 million to $1.58 billion. The funding requested is needed mostly to enhance Government of Canada network and cyber system security, to support the government response to the Syrian refugee crisis, and to offset the incremental costs of providing core information technology services to client departments and agencies. While we have made progress on several fronts, there is still much work to be done. Both departments will look for opportunities to better deliver programs and services to improve results for Canadians through sound management. Overall, the key to success are innovation, process busting, and common sense changes, and I have confidence in the ability of the public service to embrace all three. Already, I have met hundreds of dedicated, enthusiastic, and professional departmental employees in so many communities, and I intend to continue to do so. And I know that together, we can work together to meet the expectations of Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to take the committee's questions.
Thank you very much, Minister. Minister, my understanding is you were with us for 1 hour.
I am.
At 4:30 then, Minister, we'll break the proceedings to let you get on to your other ministerial duties. We are going into a 7-minute round, and the first questioner will be Mr. Drouin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, and including your department for being here today. I really appreciate you guys taking the time for us to pose some questions. One of the questions, and I'll get to supplementary estimates soon, but one of the questions I want to ask you, Minister, is with regards to your mandate letter. You were charged with modernizing procurement and making it more open and accessible to small and medium-sized enterprise. And I am from Ottawa and the National Capital Region, and I do represent a lot of SMEs, and it's important that procure and do business with the government. And how are you going to modernize this so SMEs can participate in the procurement process?
We have started already by having extensive consultation process with small and medium-sized business, with industry generally. We have a supplier advisory group that we meet with on a regular basis. It's really important to engage them to find out what the barriers have been in terms of small and medium-sized enterprises being successful in accessing government opportunities. So we are making sure that we take the time to reach out to all of those involved in industry, get their advice, learn from them about how we can do things more efficiently and more effectively. And we have been doing that throughout the department, again, to focus on not just medium and small enterprise and small and medium enterprises, but industry overall, to make sure that, again, the government is a big business in the country, and we want to make sure that everyone who can takes advantage of that because of the jobs that come with that and of the opportunities that come for companies.
Great, thank you. Just over to shared services, I know there's been some challenges, and I want to start by saying I am a firm believer in the goals of shared services. In the supplementary estimates, you asked for $54 million for cybersecurity, and what steps is SSC to ensuring that we have a proper cybersecurity strategy and ensuring? I remember a few years ago there was the Heartbleed problem, and then the problem at NRC. So what is SSC doing to ensure that those kinds of situations don't happen again?
Well, you know that what we've attempted to do with an enterprise-wide system is is not an easy task. It's fair to say that it's probably the largest undertaking in the country in terms of what we're doing, putting in place the enterprise-wide solution. What we have to do is to look at where things have gone wrong, fix those, and we're doing that. Those at Shared Services have undertaken to step back and evaluate the work that's been done to date, and on a go-forward basis, find ways to ensure that any mistakes that happened in the past won't happen in the future. So we're very cognizant of the responsibility that we have from a cybersecurity perspective, and working closely with public safety and security, working with our counterparts throughout government to make sure that everything we possibly can do will be done to secure the security of our country and Canadians.
That's great. Thank you. Just one more question with regards to shared services. Does consolidating data centers, does it make it easier to provide security with regards to cyber threats? Is that the reason why we're moving to, other than saving costs, does that help with regards to helping prevent cyber threats?
Of course. It's again, I guess the fewer avenues we have to ensure that we do get this right and that we have the types of services in place to respond quickly is important. When you're dealing with several entities, it becomes much more difficult. So working closely with public safety and with other entities to ensure that we're of the same mind and that we're working cohesively makes a difference.
That's great. Thank you. Now, one last request from a millennial. There are many millennials who were elected recently, and we have to fill out forms to get speakers, and we know how to do it. And I always think about my father, so I'm not putting everybody else in the same boat. But I want to ensure that your ministry and your department thinks about, because Minister Bryson mentioned that he wants to hire more millennials as they come on board. I'm hoping that your department thinks of a strategy to ensure that millennials are well served and that perhaps they're more tech savvy.
I appreciate the comment, and we are working very closely with Treasure Board through all of this, because of course we're very much partners in this enterprise, and absolutely. I'm there with Minister Bryson in terms of who we need to be hiring and to work with those who also have experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Fine. Did you care to cede your time with any other member?
Sure.
Madam Ratansi, you have about a minute and a half.
Minute and a half. Minister, thank you for being here. And you're requesting a funding increase of $83 million for federal real property. But my question is that you're also requesting $13.7 million in operating expenditure for the reinvestment of revenues. My first question is, how many real properties have been sold in the previous year? What was the result of the sale? And number two, there was an old practice of storing all our excess furniture in real estate. And is that practice still there? Because if we want to be efficient, really that's not a good value for our real estate.
I'm going to turn to the deputy on that in terms of the actual numbers to address that for you.
The numbers that we've sold are in total 21, and for a total of about $10.3 million in total.
Okay, but my next question was, are we still using real estate to store excess furniture, which is probably useless?
I would hope not, but I think we certainly recognize there are some issues in that area, and there are issues where we have real estate where we're occupying buildings that are not completely full, while in the same communities we're leasing other space. So one of our priorities, which touches very much on the point you've raised, is to really try and maximize the use of our space. If we have half-empty buildings or buildings that are a third empty, and we're leasing elsewhere, we want to move people into those buildings, maximize it to reduce the cost. And similarly, if we're using space in a fashion that's not productive, and you gave us one example, that we're looking to phase that out. So that space optimization is really a key priority of the real property area.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dupont. We'll turn to Monsieur Blaney.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président et Madame la Ministre.
Thank you very much. Minister, welcome to the committee. It's a pleasure for us to have you here with us. Also, I would like to extend my welcome to the people that are here with you this afternoon. And certainly you can rely on me to be a robust but effective member of the opposition working in the interests of Canadians. Of course, that's why we're all here together. Minister, I liked in your presentation the commitment that you show to the shipbuilding strategy. You recognised that this is an important area where we can create jobs in Canada, and you talk about Vancouver, Halifax and Yvelines. I'm also delighted to see that you're going to be giving us regular updates on the costs and how these projects are getting along. I think that Canadians want us to ensure that contracts that are given out by the government are met, that they're respected, the work's done in time, because this is taxpayers' money. And obviously it's a competitive environment that we operate in these days, and so it's certainly an important responsibility that's incumbent upon us. My first question then speaks to this challenge with the shipbuilding strategy. In the election campaign, I've got some copies of your election platform here. There's a plan, and you say that you want to strengthen the maritime industry, but you want to respect the standards and the rules surrounding the industry and the surrounding contracts, but you also want to create jobs. Now, we're talking about jobs here in Canada. There was an article that we saw about shipbuilding, tugboats, an article about tugboats where there was some talk about parts for these boats being built abroad. Can you tell us that when we're talking about this shipbuilding strategy, these jobs are going to be in Canada, like you committed to do in your platform?
Thank you for the question. And like you, I recognize the importance of the shipbuilding industry. You know that we have not had a shipbuilding industry in this country for over 25 years, and we need to have one. We need to have a robust shipbuilding industry in our country. We need to respond to the needs of the Navy and the Canadian Coast Guard. And in doing so, and having that robust shipbuilding industry, we need to do that so that we can involve companies throughout the country, and in doing so, create jobs. And that's what this is about. We have no decision has been made yet by the Department of National Defence with respect to the tugboats. We're very early in the planning stages for that. There are, as you know, there was a competitive process that enabled us to, or the government of the day, to come up with 2 centres of excellence, one in Halifax and one in Vancouver, which you already referred to. That doesn't preclude other shipyards from availing of opportunities, because there will be opportunities for smaller ships. While Halifax will be building combat ships and CSPAN will be building non-combat ships, there will be other opportunities for companies throughout the country to avail of, and therefore employ Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
Yes, and there are certainly many smaller shipyards throughout the country that have the capability to build those tugboats. My colleague and I, Mr. McCauley, we visited the designer of tugboats, which is in Vancouver. The best designer, I would argue, in the world is in Canada. We have the expertise. Madam Minister, I was a little bit surprised when came the time to hire an expert. You couldn't find any Canadian, and you went to hire a British independent and consultant. Any reason why you choose not to rely on the Canadian expertise in shipyard to advise you on the moving forward of the strategy?
Well, just allow me to repeat that we have not had a shipbuilding industry in this country for 25 years. We did look for a Canadian. There were Canadians who were working abroad, but in terms of the interviews that were held, it became obvious from those who were doing the interview process that Mr. Brunton was highly qualified, came with shipbuilding experience. He's a Rear Admiral, used to naval acquisitions. So we wanted to get the best possible person, and we did that, and it was determined of all of the interviews that were held that he was in fact the individual whom we should hire.
In the mandate you have provided to this consultant, have you clearly specified that the ships would have to be built in Canada in his recommendation?
We will be looking to Mr. Brunton for advice, but clearly he knows where our goal is to build the shipbuilding industry in this country. And we want to make sure that 100% of Canadian are, that we get 100% Canadian profits on all ships that are built. He is well aware of that, just as we've indicated that before. We're working closely with him, but our priority will always be to have ships built in the country. We also have to bear in mind that we're talking about Canadian taxpayers' dollars here. We want them to be spent effectively and efficiently. So a number of factors come into play, but first and foremost are jobs for Canadians.
Okay, absolutely. And regarding the taxpayer, you've mentioned you would be willing to provide an update on the procurement process. When do you expect you will be able to provide, for example, this committee with the current status of the shipyard strategy, either for the combatant and non-combatant, the costs, estimated costs, and the schedule of those ships?
We're expecting to have our first report ready in the fall. After that, we'll be doing quarterly reports. But again, bearing in mind that we are going down a different path in terms of the shipbuilding strategy. We want to make sure that we get it right. We're doing consultations on an ongoing basis with industry. So we're not going to preclude anything in terms of how we're going to roll out the strategy, bearing in mind that we know we already have the 2 centers of excellence. We know what we've committed to them to do. They're our partners in this process. So we're looking at the fall in terms of a complete report of where we are, and then we'll do quarterly reports.
Thank you, Minister. Mr. Weir, you have 7 minutes for a question and answer with the Minister.
Thank you. As the NDP critic for public services and procurement, it's great to have you here, Minister. I'd like to pick up on a point raised across the table about real property. A practice of the last Conservative government, and indeed the preceding Liberal government, was to sell off government buildings and then lease them back at much higher cost. So I wonder whether the new government will continue that practice, and specifically of the $32.8 million that's been requested for increases in non-discretionary expenses associated with Crown-owned buildings and leased space, how much of that is Crown-owned buildings as opposed to leased space?
Okay, I'm going to ask the Deputy to speak to the details of that.
Okay. In terms of the approach on buildings, I think what you're referring to is when we are in buildings that are close to the end of their life and need very, very significant refurbishment. That's really the bulk of what the real property folks deal with. When buildings get to that situation, there's a cost-benefit analysis where we look at all of the options. Would it be better to sell the building? Would it be better to invest and refurbish the entire building? Would it be better to look at some private partner, public-private partnership to see if one could build a new building? I think the approach is really to look carefully at all of the available options, look at which one has actually the best value to the taxpayer and still meets the needs of the public service, the people that will be working in those buildings. And the answer is different depending on that analysis.
Well, perhaps that should be the approach. I guess I'm still wondering if there's a breakdown of that figure between Crown-owned and leased buildings. And I guess the more general question, is about the approach of often selling off these assets for upfront cash, which might make the public finances look better, but actually cost taxpayers more in the long run. So can we get some kind of commitment from the minister that won't be the approach of this government?
Well, certainly you know, it's not all about getting cash for the buildings. It's about looking at how the property will be used. So we're very conscious sometimes of the need to take a different approach. We have not ruled that out on a number of fronts within the department. We're reviewing all of the, whether it's real property, whether it's Canada Lands, different entities within the department. We're looking at different approaches to delivering on our mandate, and real property, of course, is one of them.
Another item in the estimates that relates to procurement is $61.8 million for a new bridge to replace the Champlain Bridge. The new government has indicated that it will remove the requirement from federal funding that infrastructure projects be conducted as public-private partnerships. I'm wondering if you could update us on whether that has been done and, you know, whether it makes sense to push ahead with the new Champlain Bridge as a P3.
Well, what we are cognizant of is the need when we're spending taxpayers' dollars to do it as efficiently and effectively as we possibly can. And in looking at any new builds, we're bearing that in mind as well. So as we go down the path of new builds, we're looking at what the actual cost will be, what the best route to take is. Oh, and the signed contract for that particular bridge is a P3. I had to know that.
And that's part of the reason I raise the topic. Whether or not it's a P3, the bridge will require a large amount of steel. The Canadian steel industry is currently depressed. I'm wondering if the new bridge will be built with Canadian-made steel, and also what type of fair wages policy, if any, will be applied for the workers engaged in that project.
With everything that we're doing, we're looking at optimizing the benefits for Canadians and Canadian companies. So that is something that we're undertaking to do as a department, to look at everything that we're building to determine how best to ensure that the benefits accrue to Canadians and to Canadian companies.
But on this specific construction project, which is a huge one, can you give any indication of whether it will be built with Canadian-made steel?
Have we under the P3?
As the minister said, as you know, there are significant Canadian companies that are part of the consortium that won the contract, so there will be very significant Canadian content. I would have to look into the question you raised about whether they intend to use Canadian steel, because off the top of my head, I don't have the answer to that, so we'll undertake to send that afterwards.
Yeah, I appreciate that. On the fair wages policy, I know your mandate letter speaks to a modernized fair wages policy. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Will it be, in effect for all of the workers employed in building this new bridge?
That is the intention.
And can you tell us anything about what the policy will be?
What have we done?
Well, in terms of the fair wages policy, I think from the existing approach, as you know, under this contract and any other contract we enter into, anyone building in Canada is going to have to comply with all federal and provincial legislation and meet all of the existing requirements.
Complying with labor legislation isn't a fair wages policy. I mean, it used to be that if you wanted to bid on a federal construction project, you had to pay certain wage rates for different trades at a minimum. The Conservatives eliminated that good policy. The new government has talked about bringing back some version of it, so that's my question.
Yeah, and that's what I was explaining. At the moment, that's the situation. There is no longer those provisions in contracts, and I think the government is looking at the issue.
Okay, so not sure whether it will be applied for the new Champlain Bridge.
It may very well be, but at this point, that is part of the mandate letter in terms of, as you indicated, fair wages policy. Where we are with that is, again, it's a P3. I guess we're not sure whether or not it's going to happen with this particular procurement, but it's certainly something that we're committed to do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Minister. We'll go now to Mr. Whalen for 7 minutes.
On point of order, I believe that it's Mr. Grewal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I may
Thank you.
jump in if he shares his
Greenwald.
time with me.
And Mr. Greenwald, you can cede any unused time you wish.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, and your staff for coming today. We really appreciate it. My question was going to be on the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy, but my honorable colleague has made a very detailed discussion about that, so I'll move on. A lot of people in my riding, especially during the campaign, talked about Canada Post. A lot of people in my riding work for Canada Post. A lot of people were concerned with door-to-door delivery. You spoke today too, and it's come out quite often in question period and in the media about doing an independent task force review of Canada Post. Can you please update us on what's going on in that process?
We are determined to get this right, and that means making sure that we find the right individuals to lead the task force. We know that there's been substantial work done in the past with respect to Canada Post. Under the previous government, you know there was a 5-point plan. We need to access all of the information that's been done by Canada Post in terms of the decisions that they made. What we're saying is that we want to have more an independent review done than was done by Canada Post itself, but we also want access to the information that Canada Post has done. We want to hire the right individuals to comprise the task force to actually do the legwork that needs to be done to look at all of this research, determine whether or not there are other business lines that Canada Post can be engaged in, do some research for us. Because we don't think that we need a consultation process with Canadians, but to expect the committee to do that and all the work that will be required of it would be so time-consuming that we'd like to have an independent task force undertake that work, working with the Secretariat out of the department, and then be able to provide you with every possible bit of information that we can avail of to enable you to do the work that you will need to do if you think it's an appropriate exercise for this task for this committee to undertake.
Thank you, Minister. Throughout the campaign, we've talked about the shortage of affordable housing, and I have the privilege of sitting on the Finance Committee, and we just went through pre-budget consultations, and a lot of organizations across the country came and spoke about the importance of affordable housing. From your mandate letter, it says that you're working with the Minister of Infrastructure to do an inventory of all federally owned real estate to see if it can be converted to affordable housing. I think this is a great use of government resources and making government more efficient. Can you please give the committee an update on that process?
Absolutely, and interestingly enough, I attended a session on homelessness last night, and part of the discussion centered around the availability of existing federal buildings and how we could make them available instead of, as you know, I mean, the practice has been to try and sell off property, get the maximum dollar for it. Well, from this government's perspective, we have to have a bit of a, more of a social conscience and recognize that there could be other uses for that property. In fact, what I said last night at this meeting that we're at was that anyone who's aware in a riding where there's excess federal government property, feel free to get in touch with the department, and we can look at possible uses of that property rather than trying to sell it off. And of course that happens, that D&D would have property, this department would have property, other departments would have property that might be able to be made available for social housing.
Thank you, Minister. And you mentioned today about the rehabilitation of Sir John A. Macdonald building and the Wellington building. And the key point I noted was that they're on time and they're on budget, which is very, very important. I would just ask if these things change in the spirit of accountability and transparency, that you let the committee know so we can update Canadians if the budget, and I've worked in finance, I know budgets can come and go, so I would please request that you update the committee if the numbers change. I will now concede the remainder of my time to my colleague.
To that one point, because that is certainly what we have committed to do in terms of being open and transparent with respect to procurements, to take the mystery out of it and to make sure that Canadians know exactly what is happening. The same with members of Parliament. We want you to know where we are. We want you to know if costs go up, we want you to know that as well. It's one thing to be on time and on budget, and that's really good, but things do happen, and we want to make sure that you're aware when those things happen.
Thank you, Minister.
Mr. Whalen, you have about 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Just following, continuing along on the questions regarding Canada Post, I have to say that in addition to issues regarding housing for seniors, Canada Post questions were probably the second largest volume of questions that I had during the campaign. Every street had someone who's being affected by the reductions of service, and indeed, in the final dying days of the campaign, Canada Post shut down door-to-door mail delivery in a couple of ridings in the country, St. John's East, St. John's South, Mount Pearl, and Charlottetown, only days before the Prime Minister came out with a statement that that practice should cease. And indeed, many of the complaints were from people who had legitimate concerns about the location where the mailbox would be going. And so I'm wondering, a couple of questions on that. The first one would be, I didn't see anything in the estimates in allocating any additional funding or allotments towards the task force. So is this something that's being done under existing estimates, or if it's something that's going to be in the next budget? And second, is the task force going to reach out to Canadians and find out, for the people who made complaints to Canada Post, did those complaints result in Canada Post actually pushing forward with bad ideas, or were they actually taking those complaints seriously and addressing them properly, rather than simply using it as an opportunity to punish the people of my riding?
Well, if they did it in your riding, they did it in mine too. But what we are doing with the task force is the cost of the task force will be covered by the department, as will the Secretariat. That will be out of the department, so that's why you don't see an additional request for money. We will ask the task force to look at every possible decision made by Canada Post, whether or not the complaints that they received were responded to. That's all part and parcel of doing a complete independent review of Canada Post. And again, on a go-forward basis, make sure that if there are outstanding issues, that those issues are addressed. One of the issues we recognize, of course, is that Canada Post is an arm's length corporation, so in terms of its operations, it's something that it does what it does because it has to be self-sustainable, and it will continue to have to be self-sustainable. But at the same time, it delivers a service to Canadians from coast to coast to coast, and we want to make sure that that service will continue to be delivered. What that service will be will depend on what Canada Post can afford, because there will not be any money forthcoming from the government where it is an arm's-length Crown corporation. But at the same time, we're expecting that the task force in its independent review will look at other avenues of business that could possibly be explored that will enable Canada Post to have more revenue to carry out its responsibility to deliver mail or whatever else it intends to do or can do with the finances available to it.
Thank you, Minister. We're now going to a 5-minute round. We'll start with Mr. McCauley.
I'm going to give the first 30 seconds to my colleague here.
Certainly.
I would just like, for the record, to mention that regarding the disposal of asset, the Canada Land that already exists produces this, and the goal is to work with the industry and work on a consultation-based approach to pursuing community-oriented goals, environmental stewardship, and heritage commemoration. So I've worked with the Canada Land for the last decade, and they are very good at disposal of land. With that, I'll switch to...
Thanks. I just want to follow up with my colleagues' questionings regarding your mandate letter, and I'm approaching it probably from a different point of view. Instituting a modern fair wage policy contradicts your comment about making procurement easier for Canadian companies to do business with the government. You're going to end up excluding a huge amount of family businesses, small businesses, and those who are working on different competitive levels. How far down the path have you gone so far with the fair wage policy? We hear again and again, consult with Canadians, consult, and then we'll consult more. Are we doing this process with small businesses, non-union businesses, to discuss this fair wage policy, how it will affect the procurement, and a fairness process?
The fair wage policy, of course, is something that would be looked at government-wide, not just through the Department of Public Services and Procurement Canada.
Same comments apply government-wide. Thank you.
But it's, so having said that, it's something that we haven't engaged in at this point. It would be led by another agency of government. I would expect Treasury Board would be heavily involved in this. But
Under your
again,
mandate letter. But it's in your mandate letter.
I expect it's in everybody's mandate letter. But it's something that we've been asked to look at, and we will look at it. But again, it would be government-wide.
Okay. Are you committing to consult, as we're hearing again?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like you're not really far down the path of that right now?
Not right now.
I think I've answered maybe Mr. Ware's question. Getting back to the shipbuilding, we've seen in the several reports that you're considering sending the weapons packaging, some of the high-tech stuff, the real value-add stuff, the real industry creating part of the shipbuilding industry, about sending it south. I realize there's money involved and we need the best value. However, the NSPS, a big part of it was recreating this dead industry. How far down the path? You've said you're not going to preclude anything, but how far down the path has government gone on looking to send this business outside the country?
We are not. It is not our intention to send business outside the country. We are looking to make sure that work being done in Canada is of a high-tech nature, as well as any other opportunities that would become available. We want to make sure that we do realize that we have to spend Canadian taxpayers' dollars wisely, but at the same time, you bear in mind the trade-off in terms of the jobs that come with this. So it's a matter of consultation with industry, and we're doing that all the time because they are our partners in this. So while we're the only...
I think the report said that from the tech side that they hadn't been consulted. They were taken a bit by surprise. Is that incorrect then, maybe?
We've been consulting. I'm surprised to hear that, but we've been consulting with the Canadian industry on all facets of procurement.
Okay. Wait, just one last thing, because I imagine I'm almost out of time. Just discussing with SS or the shared services, and I realize it's been a very, very difficult process, Mr. Parker, but just wondering if you could very just briefly update us where we are with it, what other resources you need to get everything, I guess, working properly. We saw recently, I guess it was Trenton, where a plan was to put a server station, but no one had discussed it with DND, and they're in dispute about it. How far are we down the road to getting all these issues fixed? Audit report, you were short about 800 people. Is it lack of skilled people, short of people, myriad of issues? We obviously wanted to succeed.
Thank you.
Time left.
Answer in 3 seconds.
We're in the process, Mr. Chair, of looking at all of the assumptions underpinning the plan, the transformation plan, and working towards putting a new plan forward, a revised plan, updated plan in the fall of this year.
Thank you so much, sir. My list has Mr. Whalen next for 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you everyone for coming today. Picking up again on the shipbuilding strategy, there's many companies throughout Atlantic Canada very encouraged by the independent process that allowed Irving Shipbuilding to win awards of a contract and then silence, then nothing. It almost feels as if the industry in Atlantic Canada, indeed the country on the shipbuilding side, is atrophied after neglect. What is your department planning to do to move this file forward so that Canadians can get the ships built and the services expected, having them delivered?
Actually, we're very happy with what's happening with the shipyard in Halifax and with the C-SPAN in Vancouver. They've started on their first builds. So what we're seeing is we're very impressed with. They've invested the money on C-SPAN's front. They invested their own money to upgrade their facility. Halifax has also invested considerable amount of money to upgrade the facility there. We're very pleased with what we're seeing. We also see a real opportunity there to for employment, and other companies. Right now, 300 companies have benefited from the work that's already taken place, both in Halifax and in Vancouver, and those are companies throughout the country. And that will be part of our update when we give our quarterly updates. It'll certainly be part of our fall update. You'll be able to see exactly where the money's being spent, what companies are availing of opportunities to the shipbuilding industry, how many people are being employed, and the types of contracts that they're getting, so that you will see that it isn't just windows and doors, as was suggested, but some high-tech work as well. So it's important that we make take advantage of every opportunity for Canadian companies to avail of the work and offer the jobs.
It's great to hear that this is finally moving forward. On to the issue regarding cyber security, and I thank Mr. Juan for opening the comment earlier. I'm wondering, from the perspective of the estimates process, it seems like quite a large increase on that particular line item, and I realize it's extremely important. I can't tell from the way the estimates are structured how much of the line item was dedicated to cybersecurity in the larger, whatever it is, the $1.5 billion, how much of that was cybersecurity before. What does the department expect to be the rate of increase in the costs that it will be spending on cybersecurity protection efforts going forward? What can Canadians expect on that front? And so what is the delta that we're currently looking at year over year in terms of increases in the costs of protecting our network infrastructure from cyber terrorism?
Mr. Chair, I'm afraid I don't have the year-over-year growth rates in front of me, but we'd be happy to get the numbers for you. In terms of cybersecurity overall, I can tell you that there's been steady increments in recent years, and that we have seen, this underscores the importance of cybersecurity overall. As well, the department has stood up from within the overall allocation it receives the Security Operations Center that provides the 24/7, 365 monitoring of the perimeter of the attempts to penetrate the Government of Canada network. So there's been very significant efforts since the creation of shared services to bring this forward, advance this initiative.
And I guess along the same lines, having one network to protect makes it a little bit easier versus trying to protect 63, so we can see some real benefits from the strategy on that front. But in terms of downtime, when networks go down, there's a concern that if the government network goes down, then it's not just one of 63 networks that's gone down. Now it's everyone is down. And so what types of efforts are being put into place, and what from a budgetary perspective, how much effort are you devoting towards protecting our downtime? What sort of redundancy plans are being put in place, and how much effort is going into making sure that uptime is maximized on this now consolidated network?
30 seconds.
Mr. Chair, thank you. The efforts are significant. We're moving from 50 siloed separate networks to one network, and in the design of the network, we're paying very close attention to the redundancy, high availability of the network. That work is just starting. To this point, the contracts have been let to work on the new network, but it has not yet tangibly begun. The planning phase is underway. So those issues are front and center. We look to have network availability that's very high.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Mr. Blaney, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister Foote, there was a troubling article in the Hill Times reporting that Canada Post could be distributing material that is not complying with Canadian law, hatred speech, and not really interesting attitude toward the minorities. Would you like to comment on this? And is there any way you have a capability to ensure that Canada Post make sure that the material that it is distributing is complying with the law?
Thank you for the question, and I am aware of the situation, and I too have issues with the information that's being distributed, so much so that we've asked for a legal opinion on the content to see if there's any criminal aspect to it. But I am concerned about the content.
Is there any mechanism that ensure that the material that is distributed overall is complying in compliance with Canadian law, or it is more a case by case where such a thing occurs? Okay.
That's right. So
okay.
That's why we've talked to Canada Post, and my understanding is that there was an instant that they had where they had legal advice, and that there wasn't an issue that would have them withdraw it. But now that there's another piece of literature that's being disseminated, there are concerns. I too have concerns with it, and we've asked for a legal opinion.
Okay. We certainly would like to be informed of your intention regarding this certainly regrettable course of action that is undertaken. My second question is relating to, you've mentioned we would expect immigration to be involved, but you mentioned you were involved in the welcoming of Syrian. Can you explain us more specifically what was your involvement and how much has been invested in that operation, and is it a part of your estimate, and do you expect there will be growing costs as there's a increasing number of Syrian refugees that are to arrive, and especially in the terms of training and housing? Are you expecting any cost increase in that regard?
Yes, we've indicated that our request is in fact for more money to enable us to do more. Our job was actually in terms of procurement, and that was with winter jackets, housing, anything that would be required to accommodate the refugees while they were here. So we are expecting that we will need additional resources to be able to respond to the more refugees coming to our country.
Okay. My colleague has to go, but I would like him to ask his last question before he leaves.
Perfect. I'll ask very quickly. You've stated, and I was very pleased for the taxpayers about the Canada Post, no other taxpayers' money from the government. And I agree they have to find new revenue streams to increase their service. But can we commit that they are not going to be moving into areas already well served by private companies, smaller companies, and using their inherent competitive advantage to drive out already operating small businesses and other private businesses?
Well, there are some areas where Canada Post is already competitive with existing business. What we have to do if we're going to deliver a service to Canadians is find a way to do that, again, with Canada Post being a Crown Corp and having to be self-sustainable. What other lines of business they'll be able to do, I don't know, but that's why we want to have a comprehensive independent review to see what the opportunities are. And I recognize the concern you raise in terms of competitiveness with small and medium-sized enterprises. I'm sure all of that will be factored into the review that's done.
That's good. We would just like assurances that the big guy is not going to trample on small businesses already serving courier or other home delivery services right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll go for the final 5-minute round to Monsieur Abou.
Thank you, President. Merci, Madame la.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you also to the officials for being with us here today. I need a little bit of information about the process that leads people to ask for supplementary funding. Let's take an example, and perhaps there are other examples that we'll see as well as we go forward. If you look at the work that's been done on the Grande Allée in Quebec, this was something that was given the green light in 2008. So 8 years later, we're talking about doing this work. Last year there was a budget. The budget was for this was adopted, $72 million, $72 million. But I know this area as well. I grew up in this area. But a year later, so that was 7 years after the decision had been taken, we got the budget, and then another year later, they're asking for more money. What's the forecasting process when this happens? Because we knew the state it was in, and we knew what we wanted it to be. So how is it within a year you get this request for a 30% increase? Was there poor planning at the beginning? Why do we see this problem here just a year after we had decided on the amount?
Thank you very much for the question. That actually does come up from time to time, particularly when you're renovating buildings that have significant historical features that have to be preserved. We obviously do inspections of the buildings as part of setting the initial estimates. We often engage third-party experts to do that, but it's not unusual when you actually start the work and you begin, taking out things, you discover things that did not come out in the initial inspection. It's sort of not that different from a homeowner doing their own project, and once you get into it, you find there are things that you had not anticipated doing. So we do have that happen from time to time, and when that happens, if it cannot be covered in the initial budget that was set, you would look at supplementary funding to cover it. That's often the explanation.
Is it reasonable to say 30%? That should be time to time that we go over the budget? I mean...
Yeah. Well,
dans toutes, puis je veux préciser, dans toutes les propositions...
In the proposals normally, there's usually a percentage that's they say there's a contingency fund, as it were, but here we're talking about 30% more, so that's my concern. It's not the project itself, I understand that. It's a real jewel that we need to make sure it's in its former glory, but it's the percentage I'm talking about, and I don't know the details here, but I do have a concern about planning, how it is we find ourselves a year down the road with this situation. The last thing that I'd like to add is that sometimes the work's divided into 2 or 3 contracts. It's not necessarily just a situation that one contract covers everything. There can be a division in the contracts.
This is a new contract. It's not an extension of a previous contract. So it does go to finding things you didn't expect and basically having not just one contract for everything, but you have contracts for different parts of the work.
Okay. Une minute. Rapidement.
Very briefly then, talking about the Syrian community, and I have a Syrian background myself, we know that last year there was a vision to go and bring a certain number of Syrian refugees to Canada. There was a 25,000, obviously, was the number was set. What was the budget at originally? Say, let's even just say for 10,000 people, and then we managed to get 15,000 more refugees came. That brings us up to 25,000. And I see there's been additional funding requested. Now, is this additional funding that's been requested, is it for now? Is it for the here and now? Is it for going forward down the lines? How does that break down, the additional funding that's been requested for the Syrian refugees?
Very short response, if we could, Minister.
When we're, in terms of the money that we required, of course, the need would be, the request would be made through the Immigration Department. So obviously they would identify the number of refugees, and then we would, based on working with them, determine what our need would be in terms of the costs that we will incur to do more of what we've already done for the 25,000 that came.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, I have it at 4:32. You indicated you had to leave at approximately 4:30, so on behalf of the committee, we thank you for your attendance, and you are excused.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to continuing to work with the committee, particularly on the Canada Post file. If that is something that the committee feels appropriate, then I would appreciate that.
Thank you again, Minister. Now, for the benefit of committee members, 2 quick points. Normally, and we'll find this becoming more commonplace as we go down the road with committee meetings, but normally if we have meetings for 2 hours and there are 2 separate panels coming in, after the first panel is finished their presentations, wherever we are in the speaking order, we go back to the initial rotation. However, after consultations with Madame Mertansi, and given the fact that we have the similar panel before us, we'll continue with the ongoing rotation, which means the next question will be to Mr. Weir for 3 minutes, then we'll go back to the 7-minute round. We also, however, as I mentioned in the last meeting, colleagues, have to allow at least 10 minutes towards the end of this meeting for a series of votes on the supplementary Cs. So at approximately 5:20, I will be adjourning the meeting in terms of the witnesses, and we'll go then into the votes on the various sub-Cs. Okay? With that, do we have more witnesses to come to the table? We'll give them a moment to do that. Seeing how it looks like we are ready to commence, Mr. Weir, over to you for 3 minutes, please. Questions and answers combined.
Sure, I'd like to pick up on the point from across the table about the importance of affordable housing. Just this past week, a troubling story emerged about the government of Saskatchewan putting some homeless people on buses to British Columbia. And I wonder if the officials could provide some information about how quickly the federal government's proposed measures for affordable housing could be put in place in our province of Saskatchewan.
Again, thank you for the question. The role of our department in affordable housing will be a support role, but a very significant support role. So what we have done to date is we have a full inventory of buildings and structures that the department has that have some potential for being turned over to affordable housing. So that is feeding into work being led by CMHC that is taking the broad policy lead across government because, as the minister mentioned, other departments have potential properties and structures that could be used. And so that is all feeding in, and they're leading the development of an approach to strengthen affordable housing possibilities.
Might I ask how many of those properties are in Saskatchewan?
I don't have that, but I'll turn that over to my colleague, Kevin Ratford, who heads up our real property area. He may or may not have it, and if he doesn't, we'll make that available.
Yes, just to add, and thank you for the question. With respect to Saskatchewan specifically, what we have done is provided a list of all of our properties that are up for disposal. We've categorized them by criteria. Are they in an urban setting? Are they a rural setting? Are they commercial? Are they possibly residential, etc.? And the idea was that we take the 30% of the holdings that we have and provide a mechanism or at least a catalyst for other custodians of property like the RCMP, National Defense, etc., to follow up pro forma to try to move the program, at least understand our asset base much more clear. Within that list, there certainly are some properties in Saskatchewan, and I would need to dig into those and provide them for.
Yeah, if you could come back to the committee with that information, I guess, I think there are also some items you're going to look into around the use of Canadian-made steel and the Champlain bridge replacement. That would be very interesting.
Thank you, Mr. Weir. We'll go now to back to a 7-minute round. We'll start with Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Chair. As a former technology journalist specialized in free and open source software, I intend to get a bit into the weeds with shared services. So if there are any technical staff accompanying you, I'd encourage them to come up to the table and identify themselves. First of all, I want to know, of the 23,000 servers across 485 data centers that the minister referred to, how many of them run on open source software? And are we exploring significant migration away from proprietary software models toward open source software options as we transition towards 7 data centers? On the Hill, just for example, I cannot use anything but Internet Explorer because we are told it is the only browser that meets our security standards, which anyone who's been in the industry more than a few hours knows is kind of funny. And so on the server side, the various flavors of Linux make very nice replacements for the various flavors of Unix and Windows. And I just want to make sure that we're considering open source software in a serious way as we move forward.
Well, I'm not a technologist, I'm afraid. So right up front. And I'm going to ask Graham if we'll ask the technology expert, Patrice Rondeau, to take on that question.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Open source has been and continues to be an area that we focus our attention on when we have to expand our platform, especially as part of the workload migration, moving from the older legacy environment to the new. We're looking at opportunity to exploit open source software. On the data center side, we have 26,000 physical server, but we have up to 74,000 OS instances. So we have virtual servers sitting on physical server, and I would say approximately 15% is running Linux.
What are the other 75% or 85% running generally?
Oh, the remainder, you mean?
Yeah, the old
Yes.
legacy Unix systems. Are we looking at Windows servers or some combination? Or?
Oh, we're running Windows servers for a large percentage. We're running all flavors of Unix. We have HPUX, we have IBM AIX. We have a lot of mainframe capability also. The larger departments still rely heavily on mainframe computers.
Okay. Are we still using 32-bit signed integers to store time anywhere in government, or are we going to be vulnerable to Y2K38?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Are we still using 32-bit signed integers to store dates anywhere in government, or are we ready for Y2K38 bug?
Oh, we're still using 32-bit machine, but mostly 64-bit machines, if that's what the question is.
That's the
and
question.
we still have a lot of risk-based environment. So we still run some Solaris, some HPUX, some IBM P series. What we inherited 4 or 5 years ago was all the flavor of every types of servers and computers that existed probably at the time.
I'm always surprised to hear risks still exists, but that's another story. I'm probably the only member of parliament to have a PGP key, and I'm definitely the only member of parliament to be in the Debian keyring. What I'm wondering is if government employees will be encouraged to adopt PGP key signatures, trust rings, or other cryptographic authentication systems.
Yeah, I cannot really respond to this question, but I can follow up and get back to the committee.
I'm looking for some translation.
No. Sorry, it's not the kind of translation they can help us with. PGP is pretty good privacy. It's a fairly old standard, but it allows cryptographically signed or encrypted emails. And it's something that I've used in the open source community for many years, and it's a
Good privacy.
yeah, pretty good privacy, or implemented through the GNU Privacy Guard. It's a long thing, but it's a very reliable, very well-known system outside of government, and I would like to in the technology community, and I would like to see it or some kind of variant used in government because it's an added level of security to have PGP signed emails with a trust ring where I've signed your key and you've signed my key. So I'd like to at least have the government explore that if that's possible.
Okay, we can explore and get back to the committee if you'd like.
And when the response comes back, I'll translate it back for you, Mr. Blaine.
Mr. Chair, if I might, we'll come back with an explanation of what we do in terms of secure keys and that type of service. But just to note, Shared Services Canada does not provide services to the House of Commons.
No, that's fair. But this is government-wide. This is a lot of email accounts and a lot of servers and a lot of systems. Are we moving or have we moved to full IPv6 support across the network?
IPv6, I'm the data center ADM at...
Then we can have a nice long conversation and nobody will have a clue what we're talking about.
No, IPv6 I'm quite familiar with.
No, we will.
Yeah. We have initiative underway, mostly with our network area or our network branch, and they've been implementing and looking at implementing IPv6, but I couldn't give you all the details. I would have to go back to our network branch specialist.
Right. What kind of hardware are we running mostly? Like, do you know?
For network?
In the network and the server side.
On the server side, we're running all existing hardware, probably of the last 15 years. We probably have in our 400 and so data centers right now. But the newer platform are mainly blade type servers.
Okay, how much time do you have?
You've got about 45 seconds.
Okay, that's a little bit. How many, just out of morbid curiosity perhaps, how many domain names do we own as a government? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I couldn't respond. We have one main domain, which is .ca, but
that's
beyond...
Syria, that's not us.
Yeah, NFS, yes. But specific domain name count, I would have to check with our security person. Would you know, Raj? No.
Okay.
So our network experts would probably be able to give you that count.
Okay, I look forward to doing this again sometime. It's very interesting. Thank you.
Would you like us to go back?
Well, my time, I believe, is up. So.
Yeah, perhaps if you could get that information to the committee at a later date, that would be appreciated. And now, speaking from someone who is still trying to figure out how a fax machine works, we'll turn the conversation over to Mr. Blaney for 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, not to call me a dinosaur, but I appreciate that. My question will be on the mandate letter on the replacement of the CF-18 and also on the Parliamentary Precinct Rehabilitation Program. Évidemment, j'aurais aimé demander à la ministre, on est conscient des...
I would have liked to ask the Minister about this. We are aware of the exceptional contribution that our CF-18s have made in the fight against the Islamic State. But we know that these planes are coming to the end of their life cycle. In the Minister's mandate letter, there is mention of a process to replace the CF-18s. We learned this afternoon that in November we'll have an update on the shipbuilding strategy. Would you be able to give us an overview of the situation, or could you tell us, obviously this process is underway, what are the next steps? Can you give us some information about it or tell us when we will get the update? Do you know where we are with the CF-18 process at the moment?
Okay, thank you for the question. As you've noted, the government has made a commitment to replace the CF-18 and to make sure, obviously, that the Air Force has the plane it needs to do its job. What the department is doing is it's working with the Department of National Defense to design, as the government is committed, an open and transparent competition process to replace the CF-18 fighter jets. And that work is underway, and I think an update will come at the point when the government has made a choice on how to proceed.
Okay, so we certainly are looking forward to that. Now, if I bring you into the domain of the Parliamentary Rehabilitation Program, I was pleased to see that the project has been accomplished on time and on delivery. Now, I understand eventually we will have to leave Center Block and move to East Block. Can you tell us when this will happen?
The intent to vacate the center block is in 2018 and move people into alternate locations while obviously the rehabilitation work is done in the center block. And I'll turn to Rob Wright, who is the Assistant Deputy Minister in charge of our parliamentary precinct, and I'm sure he can provide you a little more detail if you'd like on where people are being moved to.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the question. So the projects, as you noted, are all proceeding on time and on schedule. And by 2018, a suite of 5 major projects will be completed, which will enable the center block to be completely emptied and for its restoration to begin. Last year, we completed the Sir John A. Macdonald facility, which provided new conference facilities for the Parliament of Canada. Within the next couple of months, we will complete the Wellington building at the corner of Wellington and Bank, which will allow MPs to be accommodated and is a critical part of being able to empty the center block. As well, in 2017, at the very end of 2017, we will complete the West Block and Phase 1 of the Visitor Welcome Center. That'll enable the chamber to be relocated from the center block into the West Block, and all the legislative functions will take place in the West Block. On the Senate side, we are rehabilitating the Government Conference Center directly across from the Chateau Laurier, and the Senate chamber and legislative functions will be relocated to the Government Conference Center. And the combination of these projects will enable the center block to be completely emptied and its restoration to begin.
Okay. Following what took place and the fact that all the security services were grouped, has it any impact on the design of the project? Like, and can you mention the visitor center and its impact on the parliamentary precinct and the access? Because this is certainly an issue that has generated some concern over what's been experienced.
Absolutely. We work very closely with the new Parliamentary Protective Service, which was put in place last summer. And I would note that prior to its creation, we worked very close with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, as well as the security services of the Senate and the House of Commons. So in many respects for us, there has been little change. We've continued to work with the security forces as we have before. And the design and construction of all of these projects have adhered to the requirements that have been laid out by the RCMP, as well as the Senate and House security forces. And now we're working with the Parliamentary Protective Service.
So the visitor center will be located on Wellington Street, and prior to access the precinct, you would go under some security checks?
The Visitor Welcome Center, Phase 1, will be located in between the West Block and the Center Block. You may note there's a large excavation in that area right now. That excavation is specifically for the Visitor Welcome Center for Phase 1 of that. You will enter essentially from the east into the Visitor Welcome Center Phase 1, which will provide security screening before entering the West Block, as well as visitor greeting services. When the center block goes under rehabilitation, the Visitor Welcome Center will be expanded to connect underground the center block and the east block. So the Visitor Welcome Center will be largely underground and will provide a secure screening before entry into the main Parliament buildings.
Thank you. It certainly, Mr. Speaker, would be interesting to have maybe a more in-depth presentation of this important project and also the budgetary envelope. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wright, for that answer. I know all parliamentarians are going to be very interested on the progress being made as we change locations, particularly of the House of Commons. We're now 7 minutes for Mr. Weir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we have an all-party consensus this committee about the need for greater clarity on the government's shipbuilding strategy. So I'd like to actually pick up on my colleague's line of questioning about aircraft procurement. It was said that the government has committed to find a replacement for the CF-18. I would note that the governing party also very clearly committed during the election campaign not to purchase the F-35, yet it was recently revealed that the Government of Canada paid $45 million to remain part of the F-35 consortium and keep open the option of purchasing that aircraft. So I wonder if from a civil service perspective, you could confirm whether or not the F-35 is actively being considered in this procurement competition.
No, all I can confirm is, as I said earlier, we are working with the Department of National Defense to develop an open competitive process, and when the government makes a decision, it will obviously announce it. In terms of the one point that you raised, participation in the Joint Fighter program, I think the important point to note there is participation in the program does not commit anyone to purchasing the F-35.
Oh, I certainly take the point that it's not a commitment, although it does seem strange that a government would spend that much money if it didn't have much interest in buying the aircraft. I suppose to ask the question a different way, it doesn't sound as though the F-35 has been excluded from the process at this point.
No, I think the main consideration is by participating in the program, it provides the mechanism whereby Canadian companies can compete for contracts and become part of the supply chain for the F-35 process, which quite a number have already done. And in fact, I think significantly more money has been provided to Canadian companies under those contracts than the government has paid to be part of the program. But if you are not paid up as part of the program, the companies in your jurisdiction can't compete. So, and as I say, the important point is it's a benefit and an opportunity for Canadian companies, but there's absolutely no commitment, no requirement to purchase the F-35.
Understood. To shift gears a little bit, also in the estimates, we have Shared Service Canada seeking some funding for increased biometric screening at the Canadian border. And I wonder what the rationale for that screening would be. Is it something that we feel we have to do as part of bilateral agreements with the United States, or is there another reason?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. Our participation in this initiative, which is mainly Immigration Department's responsibility, is to support the IT infrastructure side of this initiative. In terms of the broader initiative, Graham, do you want to say something about the purpose?
Sure. So as Mr. Parker said, it's the Department of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada that's leading the initiative, but more broadly it's to expand the use of the biometric screening to all travelers that require visas that are seeking entry into Canada. And our responsibility is to provide the hardware, the IT hardware, the servers, the storage, et cetera, and the software to support that activity.
And is that a totally new initiative for Shared Service Canada, or are you engaged in some biometric screening already?
Our role is to provide the IT infrastructure for it.
Provided IT infrastructure for it already, or is this a new item?
It's net new. It's incremental.
Okay. I guess another thing I was interested in the estimates was about $5 million to remediate contaminated federal government sites, and I'm just looking for some information on how many sites there might be, how contaminated they might be, what the risk might be to public health.
Okay, I'll turn the details over again to my colleague Kevin Radford, but this is part of a long-standing program to remediate many contaminated sites across the country, and they vary from very large sites with significant problems to small sites throughout the country. A lot of the information is actually posted on websites in terms of where the sites are and what's being cleaned up. And the funding for this happens on a regular basis in tranches of 2 or 3 years, usually, is the way the funding has been going. The sites have been rated in terms of risk, and obviously the sites with the greatest risk are addressed first. Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. I don't have much to add. Suffice to say that there is a list, as my colleague George has mentioned, of decontaminated sites. I will mention, though, that these decontaminated sites are part of our optional services that we provide to other departments. So if the decontaminated site is on an Air Force base as part of national defense, it's quite probable that they could come to us and ask for our expertise. Or if it's a property that's owned or run by another department, it's part of that suite of services that we offer, and we bill those departments for our services.
Thank you. Now, Shared Service Canada is also seeking funding to help with the implementation of the government's response to the Syrian refugee crisis. There's no doubt that the government response to that crisis, is a big initiative that has costs associated with it. I'm just wondering if you can zero in on the role that Shared Services Canada would play in that.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to. Our role is to principally supply the support tools necessary for the public service employees engaged in the initiative, such as mobile telephony, mobile laptops, and to help make sure that the servers that support the initiative in terms of the screening of the refugees are up and running on a very high availability basis. So it's those types of services that we're providing through the funds that we're requesting from Parliament and Sub-C.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parker. The final 7-minute round goes to Madame Retensi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here. As I have been listening to your presentations and your responses, I am glad that you are taking your role of due diligence and the minister's mandate very seriously and consulting so that we have the right answers. So the first thing I'd like to know is a few examples of how you are modernizing procurement and how are you making it simple. Government, everybody knows, is a mammoth body. Sometimes they feel like it's an elephant that can't move. And I come from Africa. Elephants move pretty fast. So I think they're being maligned for nothing. But if we could just give me an example of how we simplify things, number one. Okay, then I'll ask the other questions.
Well, I can give you several examples, and the general point you made is exactly the feedback that we've gotten from consultations with a very large number of companies, most of whom are small and medium-sized companies that do business with the Government of Canada, and they've given us the same point that you've made. It's complicated, it's difficult, it's more expensive than it need be. We have worked with what we now call the Supplier Advisory Committee, and they've given us a list of quite a number of things that they'd like to see as improvements to the procurement process. Some of them are underway, and some of them are major initiatives that we need to tackle. I'll give you an example of, I think, one of the number one things we heard is that the systems that we use when they go online to see what opportunities there might be or to actually put bids in are overly complicated, they're really archaic, they're old, and there's about 40-odd different systems that are used right now. One of our biggest initiatives is we're looking at putting in place as quickly as we can what we call an e-procurement package. So we will have one system, it's off the shelf, it's proven, it's user-friendly, and it will be, I think, just one big simple improvement in companies' ability both to find opportunities and to put in bids. We've accelerated that project. And we intend to be having the system roll out in 2017, 2018. If I go to the other end, we're looking at correcting a series of administrative issues that have been chronic problems. So if someone puts in a bid and somehow a page gets lost, a minor administrative thing, they're rejected. We're looking at putting in place a series of those administrative fixes so that as long as it doesn't affect, obviously, they're not changing the bid in any way or affecting price or content, that they can repair that. We're looking, another thing that I think will be a significant aspect of refinement is our contracts are very, very complicated. And often out of proportion to the value of the actual expenditure. So it makes sense to have, obviously, if you're replacing the Champlain Bridge, which is a multi-billion-dollar project, you would expect a big, complicated contract. Of course you would. But ours are overly complicated, so we're looking at an initiative to simplify our contracting, and we're aiming at the same rough time frame of 2017, 2018 for that. So those are maybe three specific examples.
And that's good, and I'm sure all of us, all MPs, have small and medium-sized enterprises in our ridings. And so do you have any idea how many small enterprises have succeeded in bidding? And I remember my days from 2004 to 2011 when I was on this committee, and we came with the same problems. Has there been any solution? We have too many small businesses telling us that they cannot get government contracts. So if you don't have figures in front of you, that's okay, you can supply that to us.
I actually do have figures in front of me, and I think it's 80%. 80% of the contracts basically do go to small and medium-sized businesses. So they are very successful in an aggregate sense. Now, that's 80% of the contracts. That's not 80% of the value of procurement. I want to make sure that that distinction is recognized.
And I quite concur with you, because I do not think that the small and medium-sized enterprises have the capacity to bid on large contracts.
Yeah.
So my next question is, we've been talking about Canada Post and how consultation is taking place, and we get people who want the service and Canada Post employees who are talking about new ways of doing business. Have you any idea when the task force is going out there to consult and get answers?
I really can't add anything to the comments that the minister's already made on Canada Post.
Fair enough. And so my third question is, I looked at the PWSG is transferring $19.6 million and 4.4 to Canada Revenue Agency and Communication Security Establishment for underutilization of the rent. Now, I can see that you have a large real property, database maybe. And so how do you decide which stock is going to go to social housing, and what are some of the challenges that you will face when you transfer it to social housing? Are there any asbestos-driven buildings? And number two, who will be responsible for those costs when they are converted to social housing?
Mr. DuPont, but we only have about 20 seconds.
Well, then I'll give you a 20-second answer. I think you've already flagged in your question some of the significant challenges is many of these properties might well need investments and repairs and conversions to be suitable for social housing. So that really would be the biggest challenge where the opportunities are there.
Thank you very much, sir. We're down to our last two 5-minute question and answer sessions, and then we'll excuse our witnesses as we go into voting on sub-Cs. First 5-minute question and answer period for Monsieur Blaney.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Ma question va porter sur...
Thank you. My question is on the Vimy Centre, replacing the visitor centre for Vimy. For the veterans reached an agreement with what was formerly Public Works to ensure that on the 150th anniversary and the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy, that we would build a new visitor centre, because the one that we have at the moment is entirely inadequate. And I wondered if it would be possible to have a little update on that. And can you also confirm that the Vimy Visitor Centre will be operational by the 9th of June 2017?
Again, thank you for the question. Actually, I received an update weeks ago, and at that time it was on schedule.
Okay. Est-ce que c'est if possible to get the pricing, because I believe the price has there's a partner, the Vimy Foundation, I believe, is that correct?
Yeah. Again, I'll ask Kevin Radford.
Yes, we can provide the costing data, etc. Actually, George is being modest. He asks me for an update on this every Monday morning on this particular project.
Thank you.
So we provide an update, and it is so far on schedule.
On schedule. Good to know. Good. Okay. You mentioned, maybe you can, you referred to the Champlain Bridge. This is a very important project, and again, I believe you are on track. Can you provide us with an update as well on this very important project for the Montreal and South Shore region?
Okay. The one thing I should say that I probably should have said in my initial response, which, as I'm sure you know, is the overall responsibility for that project is with transport and infrastructure.
Okay.
It's not with our department. We've worked and supported them very closely on handling all of the contracting aspects of that.
Okay.
So, for instance, in response to the question on steel, I will have to go back to them for the info. But I do know that, again, it's part of some of the regular updating I get, is it is on its projected schedule.
Est-ce que vous avez été impliqué dans les processus?
Were you involved in the calls to tender?
Champlain Bridge, and if so, since there's a will of the new government not to have the système de péage toll, is it having an impact on whether the mandate or modification on the project, or maybe is it whether should I ask it to you or to transport, maybe?
I think the question is better asked to transport because it's a policy question around tolls.
Okay, good. Okay. You've mentioned that, and maybe that would be a more interesting question, that you were proud of this new paying system, Phoenix. It seems like I didn't notice. I still get my due, but is it working well? And are you?
I think you've answered the question. If you had noticed, I think we would be having a much more difficult discussion at this committee.
Good.
But I do want to say, because often I think people say that, you know, in government you can't manage effectively big projects. This was an enormous project of consolidating pay administration that was divided among every department and agency in government, consolidating it in a pay center in Miramichi, and at the same time introducing a new system that automates a fair bit of the work and should be a significant improvement. And I think people sometimes underestimate how challenging managing projects of that size and that nature are. And I think I'm not going to declare victory yet, because we've gone through the first pay period this week and it's worked very well. I feel a little more comfortable going through at least one or two more pay periods before I crack the champagne. But I do want to say that I think this has been a remarkable job by the team that has worked on that in our department, in other departments. And the fact that you didn't notice a difference is exactly what we were aiming for.
Good. Thank you.
And our final 5-minute question and answer session will be led by Monsieur Durand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just one comment. Before I said that millennials were tech savvy. We're not tech savvy like Mr. Graham over here. And just one more comment before I go on to questions. And I want to thank Mr. Blaney for being passionate about defending shipbuilding jobs in Canada. And I hope, like him, that he loves to have our platform. And I'm reading with interest that in Budget 2010, the Conservative government had announced a 25% duty tariff reduction to allow imports of vessels into Canada, so ship owners could buy vessels abroad and not protecting Canadian jobs. So I hope he shares the same passion that he was sharing back in 2010.
We call it free trade.
Just over to shared services, and there is a question where I'm interested in, and this has to do with, PCPS now. So how is SSC managing the transition between legacy technologies and its related contracts, and to the new technology and its contract. And just one example, I know PWGSC or PSPC is managing some of the older contracts, legacy contracts like NES. And the reason why I ask is some companies are found in limbo. They can't, they're awaiting a new procurement vehicle, so SSC wants to buy new technology, but they can't because they don't have the procurement vehicle. Is there a strategy that you guys have adapted towards a transition? And I know we won't be talking about this in 5 years because everything will be resolved, but in the meantime, is there a strategy that's been applicated?
Absolutely. The procurement instruments have been developed, and as of September the 1st this year, the remainder of the national standing offers moved over to Shared Services Canada, and we are operating on the basis of that, taking the orders from the departments to fulfill their needs. So the instruments are there, and they're working very effectively.
Pardon my ignorance, I was in a campaign. Just, Mr. Blaney was mentioning about the Vimy Ridge, or the Vimy Monument, and one of the important questions we want to ensure is, you said it was on time and on budget. When is on time, when is it going to be completed exactly?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't have that information specifically with me, but it's something that we can certainly provide for you. I just didn't bring the data with me. I apologize.
The actual date.
Yeah.
Okay, because this is the 150th anniversary coming up, so we
Obviously in time for the 150th anniversary, but I've forgotten the specific date.
Okay.
Or there'll be a new ADM of real property here at the next time.
One of the other questions I wanted to ask for the benefit of the committee is, I know SSC is working on the ETI initiative and the data centers, but what other initiatives is SSC working on as well?
Well, those are very large initiatives to start with. So, but there's also network initiatives related to consolidating the 50 siloed networks down into one network for the Government of Canada. So those three projects comprise work that's of an unprecedented scale in terms of the transformation. There's many projects that we undertake as well on behalf of the partners, our clients. So whether it's the biometrics project or other projects that are in the portfolio, there's practically no initiative that a department is undertaking that involves IT infrastructure that we're not involved in. So there's a big suite of projects that are running for whether it's the RCMP or D&D or whatever department. There's literally, hundreds of projects there.
Okay. And I know a few years ago there's a few orders in council, and then you guys were responsible for the Workplace Technology Initiative, and applications were still with Treasury Board. Is that still the case today, or are you guys completely responsible for everything related to IT?
I couldn't hear the question. Okay. Mr. Chair?
Please.
No, Shared Services Canada is not responsible for the applications.
Okay. Thank you very much. That takes us to our end of our 5-minute round. Gentlemen and ladies, I thank you on behalf of all committee members for your appearances here today. Your information that you've provided committee members has been very, very helpful and very informative. Thank you again for taking time out to visit us today, and we hope to be talking with you again sometime in the upcoming years. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I hope the whole committee will wish the Deputy Minister a happy retirement, as he announced last week. So hopefully you share my comments.
Here, here. Here, here. Thank you for your years of service.
Thank you very much.
And
I'll
for those,
certainly miss these appearances.
and for those officials who had to deliver answers in very constrained timelines, I thank you for your economy of words. We will wait for a few moments while our witnesses depart the table. In the interim, what I will advise all committee members is over the break week, I will be asking the clerk to send out a communique indicating what we will be doing on the following Thursday's meeting. If we are able to bring in a group of witnesses to deal with some of the work identified by the subcommittee on agenda, we will have a full meeting. If not, then we will have a subcommittee meeting, but it will be during that time frame between 3:30 and 5:30 on Thursday, I think the 24th. Okay. Now, we have votes before us, ladies and gentlemen. These are on the supplementary estimate C.
Where are the votes? Oh, have I got mine? Did I go and do something funny with my papers?
I will be verbally going through them and asking for your either approval or non-approval.
Mr. Chair, which document in the SharePoint should I open?
I'm sorry, Mr. Willen?
I closed SharePoint by accident. If someone could just point me to the...
That's fine. Basically, all I will be doing is verbally asking you for an example. Shall vote 1C under Privy Council carry? You've all seen the estimates from, so you have a determination now whether or not you want to approve them or amend them or negative them. So we'll just be going through that process verbally and asking for your show of hands. Now, unless anyone wants a recorded vote, I will just be asking for ayes or nays. Shall vote 1C under Privy Council carry? Yes. Shall vote 1C under Public Service Commission carry? Yes. Any opposed? Shall vote 1C under Public Works and Government Services carry? In favor? Any opposed? Shall vote 5C under Public Works and Government Services carry? All in favor? Any opposed? Shall vote 1C under Shared Services Canada carry?
Yes.
All in favor? Yes. Any opposed? Shall vote 5C under Shared Services Canada carry? Yes. In favor? Any opposed? Shall vote 1C under Treasury Board Secretariat carry? Yes. All in favor? Opposed? And finally, shall vote 20C under Treasury Board Secretariat carry? Yes. All in favor? Any opposed? And finally, shall the committee request the chair to report back to the House tomorrow? Yes. Carried. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're completed. Thank you very much. Appreciate all your efforts.